Welcome back, everybody, to the Week 1 edition of the 2-on-1 Fast Break podcast. When we post this on Thursday, we will be just hours away from actual NFL action. I know everybody's been dying to get to that. Dan, I know we went over the futures bets in our previous podcast, but these weekly plays, I think, are where you really get excited.
Yeah, this is like the futures play. I even said it last week. They're not usually for as much money. They are tied up for the whole season, but the week-to-week grind is really where the fun is.
That's right, and we'll go over. Got a good slate of games for your plays this week. We'll go over those, and then we'll take a couple of questions from our readers. So let's get right into it. First play of the week. I think it's no surprise you like this team. You went into great detail, rhapsodic about how talented this team was, how they're unstoppable, dynamite path to the Super Bowl. Nothing can hold them down. And that's, of course, the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I think they're on a dynamite path to 8 wins. Let's put it at that.
8 wins. All right. So I don't think you need them to win, but it would certainly help your cause here because your first play of the week is Jacksonville plus 3.5. They're at home against the Panthers. Dan, talk to us about this game.
Couple things I really like here. First thing I like, the Jaguars. I think I've made that nice and clear already.
Loves those Jaguars.
I think they're a talented team. I think they take a big step forward this year, and this is something that at the end of the year I could listen to this podcast and cringe because they could be 3-13 like the Jaguars always are. But I really have a feeling I think they're good. I think the Panthers are terrible. Philly Brown is their second starting receiver now.
Ted Ginn's their first.
Ted Ginn is their first starting receiver.
Neither is good.
They have absolutely no offensive line. Any play could be Cam Newton's last of the season. He's going to get destroyed. The team in general just isn't very good. Right now, this line is where it is based on pure perception of the team. The Panthers weren't great last year, but they were a playoff team.
They made it to the second round of the playoffs.
They did.
I mean, if you can beat Ryan Lindley, you can beat the Jaguars.
And you have the team like the Jaguars, which, just like what I said when I took their season total over, the public perception is the Jaguars suck. They're not a good team. So I think you're getting, but the fact that I'm getting more than the field goal, which, by the way, I posted this when it was 3.5. Now there are some books that have moved it to 3, but with the Carolina side heavily juiced. So you might just have to pay a little bit. You might have to lay like minus 115 if you want to do the plus 3.5.
By half a point. But again, as we had a podcast about this last year, make sure you're line shopping. If you have a couple different books, don't just go to the first book and place a bet. Make sure you check a couple of them that you're on and always get the best line. So maybe one of them still has it at 3.5.
And another thing I really like is Jacksonville doesn't have the greatest home crowd. They're known to have one of the weakest home field advantages in the NFL, but not in the first couple weeks of the season because it's Jacksonville. It's 98, 99 degrees.
Blake Bortles fever.
But 99 degrees, teams aren't used to playing in that kind of weather. And Jaguars do have an upper hand. 3.5 points, home dog. I really like this game. I think that Jaguars win outright. And I think this is one of those games, and this is what I look for in week 1. I think if this game were played in week 8, what would the line be? I feel like if this game is played week 8, this is a pick 'em at the lowest.
I'm with you on this one. I agree. I'm not nearly as bullish on Jacksonville as you are.
Look, I think they're going to go 8-8, even 7-9 wins my over bet. I just don't think they're the same old 4-12, 3-13 Jaguars we're used to seeing.
I'm not convinced of even that, but I do think Carolina's in for a lot of regression this year. Like you mentioned, that line it wasn't good to begin with. It's also injured now. They're counting on Jonathan Stewart as pretty much their only established back, and he's never really shown too much over his NFL career. They got nothing at wide receiver right now, and their defense, they have a good linebacking core, but the secondary is a little suspect, and we'll have to see what they get out of their pass rush this year. But yeah, 3.5 points at home. I think that's a pretty good play. Like you mentioned, a lot of that is perception. I think Carolina might be one of those teams that people take just because they want to fade Jacksonville in survivor leagues, and that could be one of those that knock a lot of people out in those eliminator pools week 1.
Yeah, sure as heck hope a lot of people take Carolina because I think Jacksonville wins this game outright. There's a lot of ways to win this bet. Jacksonville outright. Jacksonville down 10 in the fourth quarter and scores a garbage time touchdown. Game goes overtime and Carolina or Jacksonville win on a field goal. I can't see Carolina blowing away Jacksonville.
No, they don't have the kind of dynamic offense that's really going to force a blowout in my mind either. The only way I can see them winning big is if That Jacksonville offensive line, which is also awful, has a terrible day and forces Blake Bortles into some interceptions, and it kind of steamrolls from there. But I'm with you. 3.5 at home. I like this. I like the spot for them here, even if I'm not nearly as high on them for the season as you are. All right, so going into your second play, it's a similar situation. It's another team you talked about on the futures, which you like for the season, kind of going against public perception, and that's the Oakland Raiders. And they're also getting 3.5 points at home. They're facing the Bengals. So, Dan, I think the Bengals have a little bit rosier outlook this season than the Panthers did in this similar spot we just talked about. But you also like the Raiders here.
I like the Raiders here. Raiders have a really tough. They're a really tough place to play on the road, especially for a mentally fragile quarterback like Andy Dalton. I'm just looking forward to fading him on the road in a hostile environment like this. I don't think Oakland's anywhere near as bad as they've been in previous years. And I think Cincinnati is maybe the fourth best team in their division right now, just because they've won it the last couple of years. I think this is the year that the whole Marvin Lewis era comes to an end finally for them. I think the Lewis Dalton years come to a close. I think it could be a disastrous year. I think it starts off with a week 1 loss on the road.
So do you think Cincinnati is going to be below Cleveland in the AFC North this year?
I mean, Josh McCown's going to be an MVP candidate this year.
Oh, that's a bold prediction.
Maybe. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to finish below Cleveland, but that's not a ringing endorsement. I think they're clearly worse than Baltimore and Pittsburgh. I don't see any playoffs. I think they're going to fight for 500. And Oakland's a really tough place to play.
I agree in terms of Cincinnati not being. I don't think this is going to be another 10-6 first round exit for them. I think they're going to struggle a little bit more this season than people might expect. However, I'm still not ready. I'm still not sold on Oakland. Unlike the Jacksonville play, where I think that was good value, this is kind of a stay away for me because I still think Cincinnati offense can do some damage. Jeremy Hill, I think he's going to have a huge year. I think they'll be able to control the line of scrimmage against the Raiders, run the ball all game. And say what you want about Andy Dalton, but he has good games from time to time, and he certainly has a decent set of weapons between A.J. Green, Tyler Eifert's back, Marvin Jones, and Mohamed Sanu are decent secondary options for him. So I don't know. I think 3.5 just kind of feels about right. I don't really see Oakland winning this one. So could they keep it close and cover? For me, yeah, sure. But it's not. It wouldn't be one of my plays, unlike the Jacksonville one, which I did kind of like. So
it's hard for me to resist a home dog of more than 3. So,
speaking of which, your third play is another home dog, getting a little bit more than 3. You like the St. Louis Rams. They're getting 4 points at home against the defending Super Bowl runner-up Seattle Seahawks. What do you like about the Rams, Dan?
This is funny because I'm going to give a shout out to a poster on the forum that I post on a lot called cappingthegame.com. There's a guy on there, I think his name's Wise Player. He's a St. Louis guy.
Sounds very wise.
He is so anti this play and so anti the St. Louis Rams this year that it actually scares me because he is a guy who's a fan who watches them up close. However, I look at it like, first off, this line is begging the public to jump on Seattle.
It's true.
I don't always play the games just because they're trap games. I have to actually like the play as it is. But this is a clear, you're going to have 70+% of the public on Seattle here. And I just think Seattle is going to regress this year. They have a lot of things going on. Cam Chancellor now looks like he's not going to be active for game 1. The first player in this collective bargaining agreement to hold out and actually miss game time for it. They lost a couple other players on defense. And I don't know. I'm convinced that Russell Wilson's going crazy right now. I think he's actually becoming an insane human being.
Why is that?
Well, yeah, he's talking about that bubble water curing him from concussions and how his abstinent relationship with Ciara is the greatest thing in the world. He's become Tim Tebow.
He also just made about $70 million in guaranteed money or something. So I don't think Tim Tebow is quite making that with his SEC analyst gig that he just got today. But
I also think this is a team. They made the Super Bowl 2 years in a row, and it might be sometimes we have teams that are dominant for so long, things just start to fall apart. I kind of think that's going to happen this year. I'm not betting against them making the playoffs or anything like that, but But start the season off on the road against a really tough defense, a well-coached team. I'm a Jeff Fisher apologist. Some people think he's incredibly overrated and always ends up 8-8, yet still gets jobs. I'm a fan of his. I think he's good. I think the Rams have had injuries for the last 2 years. Remember last year, I picked them as a Super Bowl long shot.
You did. and I think Sam Bradford quelled those dreams pretty early for you.
They sure did, but they're healthy this year. I think they're going to control. We were talking about controlling the line of scrimmage. They have an incredible front seven, and I think this is going to be a grind them out game. Even if Seattle wins the game, let them win by a field goal.
I agree with a lot of your points here. Similar to what I mentioned with Cincinnati, I too feel that Seattle is going to underperform relative to the public perception this year. I think that their offensive line hasn't looked good at all in the preseason. Russell Wilson has been running for his life a lot of the times in the backfield there.
He's good at that. He's good at running around and scrambling.
Which I think has kind of masked a lot of their issues. The running game hasn't looked good, albeit Marshawn Lynch hasn't been in there a whole lot,
Correct.
Given that it's preseason. But I think the loss of Max Unger to acquire Jimmy Graham is going to make a bigger difference than people might think.
It's huge. Losing a center is huge.
Yeah, he's like we talked about with the Steelers losing Pouncey. It's the pivot point of your entire offense. He's making all those calls for the line. It's much more important than people who they think fantasy football. The skills guys are the most important. It's besides the quarterback, it's one of the most important positions out there. So
I just can't resist these games.
Yeah, I know you love those home dogs. I love the Rams defense. I don't think Seattle's going to have a big day at all on offense, just because Aaron Donald and Chris Long and company are just going to be back in that backfield all day.
You don't trust Nick Foles to put up enough points to cover?
That's the problem for me. I think the Rams offense is going to be even worse, just because Foles has looked bad. The offensive line is still terrible. They might be down to Benning Cunningham at running back. They have no proven receivers. There's just nothing.
Huge on Brian Quick this year.
I mean, he's shown flashes, but he's never been a consistent guy where you could say, all right, well, Brian Quick's going to get you 6 for 80 tonight. That's not the player he's ever been. Yeah, I just don't like that Rams defense at all. And even with Chancellor, more likely than not playing, I still think Seattle is going to terrorize Nick Foles a little bit, and there's going to be some turnovers, and Seattle's going to win the game that way. So
it's been 2 years since we saw this Rams team have a real quarterback. We watched Kellen Clemens 2 years ago and Austin Davis last year, and even though I fell in love with Austin Davis for a little bit, now Foles is an upgrade over them. You know what? That's fine. We're allowed to disagree on these. We might even put a hoagie on it or something.
No, I'm not saying again, this is just a stay away for me.
Fair enough.
Week 1, it's just I like to see I like to have a little tape before I really dive into plays, unless I feel strongly about it. So it's kind of a stay away for me again. Yeah, like I said, I agree with Seattle not being quite that good, but I don't think I'm not buying the Rams are ready to take the next step yet.
Fair enough.
All right, so you got 2 more plays. I think I am going to agree with you on each of these. Let's talk about the first one. It's your 4th underdog that you like, and that's Baltimore plus 4.5. Except they're on the road. They're going to Denver. So I'm going to guess a lot of this is you not buying into the Peyton Manning resurgence this year.
No, maybe I should learn my lesson, because I didn't buy into Peyton. When Denver signed Peyton Manning, I thought he was done. I thought he was one tackle away from having his neck fused together?
Still is.
It still is fused together. I thought he was one tackle away from ending his lifeline on his career, and he's been incredible. But I really think he's on the downswing now. I watched a lot of the Broncos offense in preseason, and all he was doing was checking down. Check down, check down, check down. I think he's going to struggle to get the ball downfield. And I think Baltimore's a really good team. Denver, not as good on the line as they've been in the past. They'll have an okay defense. I just think 4.5 points is way too much for a team that, for my money, is going to challenge for the AFC title.
Yeah, I agree with you here. We talked about this in the futures podcast. I like Baltimore a lot this year. I like them to win the AFC North. I like them over 9.5 wins. Yeah, I think the Ravens are on an even playing field. They're the better team. So even though they're on the road here, it wouldn't surprise me to see them win this one outright. So 4.5 points, I just feel it's way too much. You just went over a little bit here, and I think we talked about it a lot on last week's podcast, but I'm not buying the Broncos offense. Yeah, I think the book's kind of out on Peyton Manning's not throwing deep anymore. He's just checking down a lot. So just press the receivers, and the pass rush will get there against that offensive line, which looks like it's going to struggle a little bit. So
Lost Julius Thomas, who was his big red zone threat.
yeah, exactly. So I like this. I think 4.5 points is it's actually one of the higher lines of the entire weekend, which
Because they know that the public's going to see Denver at home, and they're going
right.
to bet Denver at home.
Yeah, so I like the Ravens a lot this year. So I definitely like them in a situation where they're getting that many points. All right, and your fifth and final play of week one is the only favorite you like, but actually some weeks ago they were the underdog. The lines moved a lot on this one. That's Minnesota. They're now -2, and they're on the road in San Fran. So, Dan, I think it's pretty clear why the line moved with all the injuries, retirements, and just overall turmoil that's going on in San Fran. So you still like the value here with Minnesota being the favorite?
I do. It's because it's under a field goal, and I think Minnesota's going to win this game. Minnesota's coming into this year energized. They have their superstar running back back from his suspension. They have Teddy Bridgewater in year 2. They finally found a receiver last year in Charles Johnson who can really play in this offense. Greg Jennings at number 2. This team is going to be really dangerous this year.
Greg Jennings no longer in Minnesota.
Not your Greg Jennings. Who's the second receiver?
Mike Wallace.
That's so. I've always gotten those two confused just because they're burners who go deep.
Both not good in 2015.
Both not good in 2015. But I really like this offense. And I can't even tell you. This is, by the way, from the corrections department. That's the second thing I've gotten wrong this year. Last week, I talked about Western Michigan being a team that went from +17 to -2.5. It was Western Kentucky.
Yeah, whoever's doing the editing on these things has to get his act together.
But
talk to the intern.
You know what? If people are calling me out on that, it means they're listening. So you can't complain about that.
All right, that's good. Good to hear.
Back to this game.
How many people called you out on Western Michigan? All right.
2 people actually called me out.
All right.
But one thing that they're not going to call me out on because they'll probably agree because everyone agrees, San Fran stinks.
Yeah, it's going to be a down year for them.
It's going to be a dumpster fire year for them. Even the fact that they're home and, Minnesota's traveling to San Francisco for a Monday night game, that doesn't even scare me here. I think Minnesota's the better team under a field goal, and I think this sets the tone for a year. I think Minnesota's going to be a dangerous team. I think San Francisco's going to be a dumpster fire.
I agree. Vikings, one of those wild card sleepers that everybody's been talking up all offseason. I love what Mike Zimmer's doing there. I think he brought that defense up a lot from where it was last year. They're only going to get better this year. They used their first-round pick on Trey Waynes to help solidify that secondary. Anthony Barr looked great in his rookie season last year. They got a lot of good pieces on the defensive end. And offensively, they got Kyle Rudolph coming back. They got, like you mentioned, All-Day Peterson back in the lineup. Doesn't hurt to add one of the best players in the game to a team. So I think that they're just solid on both sides of the ball. They're a very good team this year. And San Fran, it hurts to lose about 3 Pro Bowl caliber players from last season and a bunch of other guys just leaving. They got Navarro Bowman coming back, but not a whole lot else defensively. And the offense hasn't looked good for a few years. So,
and I say this again: this game takes place week 8. San Fran's a 6-point favorite on the road. Minnesota's a 6-point favorite.
I think the book isn't. It's out, but it's not in wide publication yet regarding the San Fran demise this season. So. I think the line has already adjusted a lot, and I agree with you. If this was later in the year, it would be an even heavier favorite for the Vikings. So I agree with you there.
5 plays, there they are.
5 plays. Just to recap: Jacksonville +3.5, Oakland +3.5, St. Louis +4, Baltimore +4.5, and Minnesota -2. All right, so that's just plays for week 1. as always, we'll keep track of those on the site and keep Dan honest with his plays throughout the year. Hopefully, not another sub 50% campaign like last year. Get back to that almost 70% clip from 2 years ago. There was some good times.
Yeah, 58% is what I go for in every sport every year. That's doesn't sound like anything special, but 58% is enough to put you in the upper percentile.
Exactly. So don't believe someone that says they win 2/3 of their games or that they're lying to you.
They're 100% lying to you.
Right. All right. So we're gonna get to one or two reader questions here. Like I mentioned, Jeff Camlin gave us a lot of good questions last week, but we weren't able to get to them all. So we're gonna knock out a couple right now. He asked, which rookie running back will have the biggest impact for his team this year? Todd Gurley, Amir Abdullah, or Melvin Gordon? So Dan, why don't we talk about this both from a real life perspective and for a fantasy perspective for those people out there that maybe still have to do their drafts or have some starts at decisions, stuff like that.
He disrespects TJ Yeldon, doesn't even give him a mention there.
No, he doesn't. So let's just focus on the three you mentioned, though.
Well, Amir Abdullah is the sexy name because he was the early preseason sleeper that everybody jumped on right away. And it looked like he was going to be a beast. He was going to catch passes out of the backfield and just be elusive and a dynamic kind of player. But he kind of came back down to earth a little bit and makes you think even when Reggie Bush was that exact kind of player for the Lions, he wasn't exactly a fantasy superstar. He was startable. He was usable. I don't think Abdullah's bad. I think you can go a lot worse than Amir Abdullah, but Joique Bell's still the starter there, and the preseason hype has Abdullah's value a little bit too high to the point where I don't have him on any of my fantasy teams because somebody wanted to be the guy that everybody ooh and ahhed about and took him a couple rounds too early. Melvin Gordon looks like he's going to be the guy, even though there's been a lot of talk that he can't block. And right in San Diego, the number one goal on that team is to keep Phillip Rivers in the lineup.
Right.
If Melvin Gordon struggles in pass protection, they will not hesitate to take him out of the lineup. He's very talented. He was dynamic last year, but you don't know when these reports come out about a guy not being able to block. You don't know how serious to take them. I also think, and one guy I did end up owning on a lot of my fantasy teams is Danny Woodhead. I think he's going to get a lot of third down carries. I think he's the guy the team trusts right now. Melvin Gordon still has to earn that trust. Todd Gurley, for my money, is by week 4 or 5, he's going to be a superstar player. He's going to be a fantasy start every week, and I think he's just going to be a great running back in an offense that's going to run and an offense that's already decided that he's going to be the main guy that they're going to run with. So of those three, I would probably go Gurley, Abdullah, Gordon in that order. What would you think?
I agree. I like Gordon would be last on my list. You talked about it, but they don't trust him. It's as simple as that. Even in the red zone in the preseason, they took out Melvin Gordon and slotted Danny Woodhead in there for red zone carries. So they like him in the red zone. They like him in third down situations, and they like him in any obvious passing situations. So if Danny Woodhead's on the field in all those instances, what's there left for Melvin Gordon? Not a lot, I would say. I know they spent a first-round pick on him, and they even moved up a couple spots to get him.
If you're in a dynasty league, I absolutely
I think
Danny Woodhead's not the future of the San Diego running game.
Just talking about this year, I don't think it's Gordon's year. I think they're going to want him to have another year of seasoning, another year of off-season training, working on the kind of finer points of playing the running back position besides just running it up.
Because we know he can run. We know he can run like crazy.
So it comes down to Gurley or Abdullah for me. And between the two, I think real life Abdullah probably has the bigger impact just because he's going to be there from day one. He's going to be a dynamic threat in a Lions attack that passes a lot. And Joique Bell's already banged up. Who knows if he's going to be able to be healthy all throughout the season. But from a fantasy perspective, like you mentioned, Gurley, he's just going to be the workhorse when he comes in the fourth game of the season. And
now he's not necessarily out. Like he might even play.
No, I think they announced.
Did they? Is he on the PUP list?
He's not on the PUP. They just said he's going to sit through the bye is the plan, and I think they have a week 4 bye. So I think Yeah, you can look that up, but I'm pretty sure that that's more or less official. But I do agree. He's going once you wait for their fourth game of the season, he's going to come in. He's going to be a 20 carry a game guy, and he can pass protect. He can catch the ball a little bit. So
Yeah, it looks like Ian Rappaport, who is an NFL.com reporter who knows his stuff and is very connected, 22 hours ago tweeted not to expect him for the first 3 weeks.
right. All right. So I think we covered that one. Get to one more question. Which QB would you bet on being one of the next stars in the league? He gives two options here: Teddy Bridgewater or Ryan Tannehill. Which do you like of those two?
It's a great question. I think that of those two, I'm going to go Teddy Bridgewater. Just because Ryan Tannehill has been in the league a couple of years, and last year he put up a top 10 fantasy season. He was serviceable. He was very good. But Bridgewater was a rookie, and for the last, I think it was 8 weeks of the season, something along those lines, was up there with all the good quarterbacks. If he can continue to grow and progress, the sky's the limit for that guy. I think Tannehill's solid, but Tannehill's more of like a guy like I don't even know who the guy to compare him to is. Maybe Rivers or Roethlisberger, who starter, a guy who the franchise knows is their quarterback. There's no controversy. They're happy with him, but might not be a dynamic superstar.
I don't know if Roethlisberger would be the guy with no controversy comparison.
No, I mean controversy is the playing time, not as to their character as a human being.
Right. All right. I mean, Roethlisberger did win multiple Super Bowls. I think Miami would take that.
Absolutely, but if you're drafting a fantasy football team, is Roethlisberger ever a top 3 or 4 guy taken?
No. But he says next stars in the league, so I don't think it's necessarily a fantasy perspective he's talking about.
I think both of those franchises are very happy with the guy behind center right now.
Yeah, I think one thing going for Tannehill is he got such a hot wife.
Oh man,
it never hurts to have a hot wife to be a marketable presence.
And you don't want to know a fun fact about Tannehill that you might not know because I don't think they talk about this that much on TV. He was a wide receiver in college.
Oh, is that right?
He was a wide receiver.
Wow.
And he's actually still learning the quarterback position, so he's not even fully developed yet.
He's been playing quarterback for a few years, though. I think
but most guys in the NFL
probably should have it down by now.
Yeah, most guys in the NFL have been playing quarterback for 26, 27 years.
Yeah.
Look, both of those guys are good. I don't know if any of them are ever going to be on the cover of Madden. I don't know if they're ever going to be that guy. I don't know if they're ever going to be Andrew Luck level, face of the NFL. I think both of those guys are good quarterbacks, and I think that, like I said earlier, their teams are very happy with them, and they're not going anywhere.
Yeah. If I had to bet on one between the two, I go Bridgewater just because Tannehill we've had a longer track record with. I think he's probably closer to his ceiling right now than what Bridgewater is, who had a very good rookie season. So I think the likelihood of either being a star is not very high, but Bridgewater, just because there's more of an uncertainty surrounding him because he's so young still, I would hedge him. But both good young quarterbacks who half the franchises in the league would be happy to have. All right, so that will conclude our reader questions for this week. I'm going to have one kind of programming announcement. Our Survivor contest is going on again this year for the third consecutive season. I give away $100 to the winner. It's absolutely free to enter. All you have to do is be a follower of us on Twitter at PhillyFastBreak and like our page on Facebook. And then retweet one of our tweets that I send out regarding the Survivor contest. I've sent out 2 already. I'll probably send out another one on Friday. Just go to the Twitter page at PhillyFastBreak, find one of those tweets, and retweet it. And then you just have to email your picks each week to us, and that email is phillyfastbreak@gmail.com. So past 2 years, people have won $100, and it's absolutely free to enter. There's literally no downside, so you should do it. All right, and that concludes the Week 1 podcast. Hopefully Dan goes 5-0.
Let's start it off right this year. Last year we started off on a bad foot, and it didn't get any better.
Yeah, it was very hard to climb out of that hole last year.
Was it 0-5 to start, I think?
Yeah, I think so. So I think offline before the podcast you said you think you'll go 4-1. I say 5-0. I say shoot for the moon.
Shoot for the stars.
Yeah. All right, thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll check in with you next week.